The implications of the word riot is that it's nothing, it's mayhem. It doesn't have a purpose. It's violence that is meaningless. People are just acting out. If you use a word like rebellion or insurrection, uprising, those are words that carry a weight to them. They carry a context that's different. And you have to think about it. There's something in the organic nature of those words that makes you feel that something needs to be researched. There's a reason why people are uprising. There's some sort of social injustice that's at the root of this. But if you just call it a riot, then it's very easily dismissed. There were several factors that inspired me to write this play. The first one that I think I remember was a YouTube video that I watched of Bobby Seale, who was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party in Oakland. He was in jail, and they had gone into the jail to interview him. And this particular interviewer wanted to know what Bobby Seale wanted to eat when he got out.
Then I got this pan of rice-a-roni cooking. See, I've got this 3 or 4 slabs of butter. And the bottom of this pan is just melting, and I throw this rice on and let it brown over, you know what I mean? And boom, throw all this stuff in, and I take 3 tomatoes, 1 tomato, you know? After the rice steams up inside, you know? I put the water in, put the little herbs and all this stuff, this beef rice-a-roni, you see? And after it comes up, I take a tomato on top of the rice. I stir it up and then let it steam a little bit, and I take a tomato and slice it all up and put the slices all over the top of the rice and put the lid back on it, you know, and then let it sit there, you know, real low, fine, let that juices from the tomato simmer down into the rice. You dig?
And it really, really struck me because the way that we put revolutionaries or activists on pedestals, we put them on posters, we make them icons, and we see them in a very select way, a very limited way. They've got to always be, you know, carrying a sign, or they've got to be talking in a megaphone, or their fists have to be up in the air or something. But there are actually other sides to them, and they're actually people who eat and, you know, have favorite foods and get married and have children and have, you know, want to have lives, I'm sure, that the rest of us have, but they've given themselves off also to something bigger, a cause that they're, you know, probably willing to die for. How do you navigate that kind of a life? And so the characters in Don't Call It a Riot, even though they're out there, you know, trying to create a better world, and you know that, you also see their personal lives and all the things that they undergo in their personal lives. So I wanted to bring that personal aspect out. And I remember looking at a blog, it's called Radical Seattle Remembers. And it has all of this information about all of the direct action, all of the activism that's happened in Seattle that I'm sure that a lot of people don't know about. And so I wanted to, being a person that's always admired activists, I wanted to be able to bring some of that information to the fore, maybe things that we've forgotten about or just didn't know about. People ask me sometimes, they're like, how do you complete a project? How do you even get started on a project? And it only takes something small. You don't have to know everything that's going to happen. You don't have to have a lot of details. If you know one scene that might happen in this play, you can start with that one scene. That first line can move you into the next line and then into the next line. I find that once I commit to putting something down on the page, the work can then kind of take a life of its own, and it can start to speak to me, and the characters can start to speak to me, and they can start to tell me where they want to go from there, or what they've experienced before, what led them to this scene that they're in. And that's a magical process. I think it's extremely magical. I don't totally understand it. I don't think that I need to. You know, something is moving through me, and it's allowing something to come into manifestation. It's like birthing a baby. In the play, you have 1968, You start off with the Black Panther Party, and then it jumps to 1999 and you have the WTO protest. People ask me sometimes, how did you put those two things together? In my mind, those were two very striking events. Obviously, as a young person, if you're a young Black person in 1968, you know about the Black Panther Party. Whether you agree with them or not, you know about it. And it's very different. It's a big departure from what has just gone before, which is the civil rights movement, and which is another very powerful movement. But the philosophy behind it is different. It's a peaceful protest, turn the other cheek. Whereas with the Panthers, there was that steep departure from that where it's like, we're going to stand up and defend ourselves. We're not turning the other cheek. And so if you're a young Black person who has grown up with parents who are rebels and who are always telling you to stand up for yourself, this is going to be very attractive to you. So that was very salient in my mind. The WTO protest, if you were here in 1999, that was another striking event. Lots of peaceful protests, lots of celebration, but then also a lot of police in riot gear, pepper spraying. After a while, after a couple of days, everything's boarded up. This is downtown Seattle, so even if you weren't there, you saw it in the newspapers, you saw it on the television. It was national. The kind of activism that was happening in 1968 looked different than the WTO protests, but the issues are still the same. And so I thought about generational activism. I relate the most to the character of Reed in the play. I guess I relate to her because I like her. She starts out, she's very smart, she's very ambitious, she's going to law school, she wants to be a civil rights attorney, she's committed, she's part of the Panther movement, and she's idealistic. And it's almost as if she knows it's going to be difficult, but she doesn't know how difficult it's going to be. She doesn't know the sinister elements that exist that can derail what she's doing, but she learns about them. And her idealism then is, for a while, it's destroyed and she gets pulled into a very dark place. But then she comes out of that place and she's not the same. She's not the same idealistic person that she was in the beginning, and she's not even as ambitious as she was, but she still has this solid core of principles that she has always believed in and she has always abided by. I think it's important for people to see this play because the play takes place in the past. We're looking at 1968, we're looking at 1999. We're in 2019 now. It's quite a ways back. But the same things are happening that were happening then. We still have the same issues. We still have people that can't feed their families. We still have people that can't get an education, who have lack of opportunities. We still have people who need decent housing. We still have labor laws that are unfair. If you're challenging the status quo, and you're actually making some progress to make things more equitable, there's going to be a reaction to that is going to try its best. There's a force that's going to try to snatch that away. History is very important. I think that we have to know our history. We have to know what's happened before. We have to know where we are now, and we have to know where we want to go. And I'm hoping that this play can open up a kind of dialogue in which people of all generations can have a discourse on where we've been, where we are, and what are the strategies, what are the things we want to do to actually evolve as a human race. And I know that sounds pretty grand, but I think we have to start somewhere. So I'm hoping that there's a real dialogue that can happen.